Hey there, welcome back to Backyard Ballistics. These are 5 firearm myths debunked, including the one you saw on the thumbnail. I hate clickbaits. Enjoy! Sometimes firearm and ammunition producers make ridiculous claims regarding the recoil reduction capability of their products. Unfortunately, no matter how famous your brand is, you cannot cheat the laws of physics. For a given forward momentum that you give the bullet, an equal amount is given to the gun in the opposite direction. Once you have chosen your bullet weight and velocity, the only thing you can do to mitigate recoil is adding a muzzle brake, which is the only way of reducing recoil momentum, and increase the gun weight, which won't change the recoil momentum, but will reduce the recoil energy, which is what causes discomfort the most. Any other thing, including the gun operation type, is only going to affect the time over which the recoil impulse is transferred to the shooter, which can be optimized to an extent to reduce discomfort, but does nothing more than what an equivalent recoil pad would do. I'm sure you've heard somebody saying, wow, you've got to have a good aim. In fact, with the exception of severe eyesight problems and while using corrective glasses if needed, we all have the same aim. For the same reason why we can read from the same distance if we have properly corrected eyesight. What makes the difference is not the aim, but the hand. What causes us to go off target is being unable to keep the gun pointed at the target. Not only because we're not able to remain perfectly still, but mostly because it is harder to remain still while pulling the trigger. Also, a lot of beginners tend to involuntarily anticipate recoil, flinching, and thus shooting way off target, usually low. So we should say that a good shooter has a good hand instead of a good aim. Even if you're not an avid movie watcher, I'm sure you've already seen the scene where somebody uses a pillow to suppress the noise of his weapon. So let's put this myth to the test. I'm measuring the noise level at about 5 feet of distance from two guns, my personal Glock 19 firing a regular 9x19 load, and a Desert Eagle chambered in 44 Magnum firing full power loads. As you saw, I got a max of 105 decibels with a 9mm and 109 with a 44. Once that is done, I repeat the measurement, but this time the gun muzzles will be resting against an old wool pillow that I folded into, shooting through it. Since I needed a cool thumbnail, I decided to sacrifice a couple of non-edible pumpkins. Immediately after the shot, I was quite surprised by the little amount of noise the 9mm made, and the sound meter indeed measured only 93 decibels max against the original 105. So it turns out that this myth has a kernel of truth. Of course, the pillow gets in very bad shape after just one round going through it, but for that single shot the noise reduction is significant. So let's take these to the extreme and try with the Desert Eagle. As a little riddle for my beloved viewers, would you guess in the comments why, out of all the possible 44 Magnum guns, I picked up the Desert Eagle? Let me know. For now, let's just see what happens. This time we got a louder and more prolonged noise, but it definitely didn't sound like a full power 44 Magnum going off. And the sound meter is indeed indicating a max of only 99 decibels instead of the 109 measured without the pillow. So in conclusion, the pillow suppressor myth has a kernel of truth, and a noise reduction of a little over 10 decibels is obtainable, which is definitely not irrelevant. Now I will debunk a couple more quick myths, and then you will get some bonus footage at the end, so let's go. I've heard any sort of myth concerning tracer bullets, but the most frequent one is that they would contain white phosphorus and hence ignite in contact with the air. Turns out that there is no phosphorus at all in tracer compositions, let alone the white allotrope. In fact, if that was the case, a sophisticated handling would be needed to prevent them accidentally going off in storage, since loaded cartridges normally contain a little bit of air. Also, it wouldn't make a lot of sense, since white phosphorus doesn't really burn that bright. In fact, a tracer bullet is nothing more than a regular FMJ bullet with a tiny rod flare stuck at the bottom of it. You can see that the jacket is much longer than a regular one to make room for the pellet of pyrotechnic composition. Also, as expected, the composition doesn't react at all when exposed to air. To ignite it, a heat source is needed. During firing, this is provided by the burning propellant, while now I'm just using a little torch. You can see that the first thing to go off is the dim igniter, which may or may not be present, and then the proper tracer composition ignites. As expected, we get a very bright flame for a few seconds. To show you that this is nothing more than some flare composition, I'm going to compare it with a small piece of pyrotechnic material I got out of a hand flare. There is not really that much of a difference, is it? A few differences may be present of course, but the main chemical makeup is pretty much the same. A metal powder, usually magnesium, that gives the brightness, and an inorganic oxidizer that gets it to burn and provides the desired color at the same time. In the case of red, strontium nitrate and/or peroxide is used. Then of course you get additives and binders, which may be a little different. Never dry fire your gun or you will break it. Now, as often happens, this one has a kernel of truth. In fact, certain weapons are actually damaged by dry firing, and in some cases just one single event can do serious damage. But many other weapons, actually most of them, are instead completely immune to it. So let's see how we can tell if a particular weapon can be dry fired without worries. The only weapons that can break with a single dry fire are bows and crossbows, especially when they have, as is common practice, composite limbs. These two fiberglass limbs have been broken by exactly that. One single dry fire of a compound crossbow because the shop owner didn't have a clue how to unload it without pulling the trigger. Nobody was injured, but pieces flew everywhere. Then we have weapons that can easily be damaged by a few dry fires, which are percussion cap muzzleloaders and spring-powered air guns. In the first case, firing without a cap fitted to the nipple will generally damage it, mushrooming its tip until it is no longer possible to fit a cap on it. In the case of spring air guns, the problem is a little bit trickier to understand. What the spring does is accelerate the piston, which is a heavy chunk of metal, towards the end of the cylinder. During the stroke, it will transfer its energy to the air, compressing it and losing speed. If however a pellet is not present at the breech of the barrel, the air will be able to flow out instead of compressing, meaning that the piston is going to hit its end stop at full speed. Differently from a firing pin, the amount of kinetic energy of the piston is substantial, so the impact can be, and usually is, able to do damage. Coming to actual firearms, center fires are usually completely immune to dry firing, since in case a round is not present, the firing pin tip is not going to hit anything else, while its body is going to hit an end-stop surface, which is designed to keep stresses under the design thresholds. This may not be the case for rimfire weapons, however. In fact, in many of those, discharging the weapon on an empty chamber will cause the firing pin to strike against the barrel wall, damaging both the pin and the breech face. However, many designs exist that prevent this from happening, preventing the firing pin to extend past what is strictly necessary for striking the cartridge rim. So in conclusion, well-built centerfires can be dry fired without worries, rimfires shouldn't unless you are sure that with your particular gun it is safe to do so, while Springer air guns, bows and crossbows must never be dry fired. And this was it. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, you can help me keep making more simply by liking and subscribing. I will leave you with some bonus footage and I'll see you next time. Bye.